a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff here, and it didn't sign anything. Okay, so let's go to the beginning of the tour. Hopefully, we'll have some comments from you about how the tour operates, how this discussion operates. And there's a lot of words, even though it seems to be a smaller section. So let's take the first section of the tour. Ruben, read the first section. Kedera Shabisha.
All right. כדרה שבישל בה בשר לא יבשל בה חלב, ואם בישל בה בתוך מעט לאט אסור. אבל אם שם מעט לאט קודם שבישל בה, הווה נותן טעם לפגם מותר. So basically,
okay, stop there. Okay. Who's talking here? I guess it's the tour, right? The tour's talking. He's laying it out. If we just stop here, it should be as simple as pie. But Ruben, summarize what he just said.
So it's basically defining a couple elements. So it's laying out the groundwork. So if we have like a fleshik pot in which you decided to cook milchig, if you cooked in this pot within the same day, within the same 24 hours, it's asur. But if you wait more than 24 hours before cooking meat in this fleshik pot, it's noten tam lipkam, and then in this case, it's permitted. So basically, saying that after 24 hours,
mutter. What's mutter?
The mixture is mutter. That's how I understand it at least.
Wait, did you say something was forbidden?
Yeah. So if he cooks in this pot before 24 hours, so then it's asur. But after 24 hours, it's considered noten tam lipkam, and then it's mutter.
Okay, halacha should just stop there. Life would be sweet. Okay, let's look at the Beit Yosef. Okay, Ruben, continue the Beit Yosef.
כדרה שבישל בה בשר לא יבשל בה חלב, ואם בישל בתוך מעט לאט אסור, אבל עם שעה וכו'. בסוף מסכת עבודה זרה, הפליגו תנאי בנותן טעם לפגם אם הוא מותר או אסור. ופסקו הפוסקים כמאן דשארי, ואמרינן דגמרא. ולמאן דאמר נותן טעם לפגם מותר, גאולי גויים דעשה רחמנא, איך היא משכחת לי. סמר רבי חייא ברי דרב הונא, לא אסכה תורה אלא כדרה בת יומא דלאו נותן טעם לפגם. ופריך מכאן ואילך, להשתרא פירוש אפילו לכתחילה. ומשנה גזירה שאינה בת יומא, עטו בת יומא.
Okay, now, does this say anything different than what you said?
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? Major distinctions. The major distinctions are so clear to us already that there's no problem. We know this. We've seen it before in Taruvas. Okay, so this is good.
The Torah didn't say asur b'noten tam.
Sorry, Lexi?
He's just upset that the Torah didn't say asur b'noten tam.
Well, so let's see if he makes an appearance. Okay, that's fine. Let's see if he makes an appearance. Ruben, continue.
ומה שכתב רבנו דאם בישל בה בתוך מעט לאט אסור. אז כך היא מסקנת הראש. דכל תוך מעט לאט מקחה בת יומא. והתבהר בסימן ק"ג.
Now it's just important, just doing the language now, right? Just doing the language. Okay. ומכל מקום.
ומכל מקום דברי רבנו סתומים. במה שכתב, ואם בישל בה בתוך מעט לאט אסור, דמשמע דלא משכחת לה צד היתר. דהליטם, דהנה שהסכימו רב הפוסקים,
Wait, before you go any further, just tell me, so it's satum because of its absoluteness. What's about its absoluteness that's problematic or troubling for the Beis Yosef?
So he's basically saying that in every single case where you cook this milchig in this fleshik pot, me'at le'at, it's asur. So like it doesn't matter if there's shishim, not shishim, whatever it is, in every single case it's asur. זה משמע דל משכחת לצד היתר. It's basically trying to say that if you cook מעט לאט within the same 24 hours, there is no possible היתר.
And so he's going to have to offer to us distinctions. Okay. Go ahead.
והלתא דנהי שהסכימו רוב הפוסקים דבכולה כדרה מהשכינן כמו שכתב בסימן צדיק ח'. So basically saying that Rav Poskim said that if you have shishim, so then you should be able to permit the mixture. ואין במה שבתוך הכדישים כנגד כל הכדי, כדמשמע בדברי הראש, שכתב רבנו בטור אורח חיים, סוף סימן תנ"ב, מכל מקום הווה לפירושי דאינו אלא בנותן טעם. ושמו כמו שכתב רבנו בסימן צדיק ח' שהוא דעת הראש. והרמב"ם נמי, אף על גב דסבר דאיקה דליקה שישים, לא שם חינן הקלפיה, לא שם חינן הקפלה. הכאמר, דהיינו כשנתערב גוף האיסור.
Okay, wait, he's going to give an interesting point. Before he gives an interesting point, what's the setup here? As he sets this up. What's he telling us?
So he's basically trying to say that there's no question and he's just setting up the cases. Like, he's basically setting up the case in which he says that it's total yes or in me'at le'et.
Well, he's addressing the question of like, basically, what does it mean? Like, if you say notain tam, what does it mean to measure with the pot, right? This question of like, if we end up saying asur, not just sam, asur b'notain tam, like, oh, maybe he said it was just asur because maybe he thought we measured the whole pot and then you're never going to get shishim.
Okay, good. So continue, Ruben. Go back. So he's going to disregard, even though, right, the Hecha Deleka Samach, they have told us, Shishim, Lo Samchinin HaKafela, right? You need to have the shishim, that was, the double, the suspenders and the belt. You have to have both. HaKamar, but that's only, right, HaKamar, the Hainu, you go ahead.
Sorry, כשנתערב גוף האיסור, when the I guess the body of the Isur got intertwined together. אבל כשאין שם אלא טעמו, but in case when there is only taste, כי אחר בנותן טעם שרי, in this case, it's fine to just to permit it, or sorry, בנותן טעם. אף על פי שאין בו שישים, כמו שכתב בסימן צדיק ח'. וכן פסק הרשב"א, וזה לשונו, כל עיקר דלא ידינן מאי דנפיק מיני, איקה קפילה וטעמה וליקה טעמה, אף על גב דלית שישים בדידי מותר. And now he goes on to explain why. דכיוון דליקה טעמה, מידי ידינן דלא נפק מנטפה, מאחד משישים בהיתר, והווה דלא נמחה שם גופו של איסור. וכמו שאני עתיד לכתוב באיסור, שבטל בשישים, כמו שאני עתיד לכתוב באיסור שבטל בשישים. אבל ליקה כפילה בכולה כדרה, מהשכינה במאי דנפק מיני. דנפק מיני לא ידינה, כאן לשונו. בתורת הארוחה בתחילת טבעית, הדלת, ובידיעת תנא בפרק ג' כדרה שבישל בבשר לא יהיה בטל בחלב, ואם בישל בנותן טעם. ופסקה הרמב"ן בפרק ט' מהלכות מאכלות אסור.
Yeah, okay. So the Rambam paskins just like, well, just like the Torah paskins just like the Rambam paskin. What's this business about the goof? What point is he making about the goof Isur as opposed to the Tama Isur?
When you have gufa yisor, you can never have less than shishim. Like gufa yisor, you need shishim. Can I get the entire gufa yisor because the entire thing is dissolved in your thing? Whereas when you remove the goof and it's just whatever, like nafak mine is whatever is in there, if you have a way of tasting it, then you don't need shishim if there's no flavor.
So therefore, by talking this way, what's he able to accomplish?
He's able to accomplish a scenario in which we would only have to measure, like if we had a kfela, for example, we can have them taste this pot and we don't have to measure against the actual mass of the pot because the pot is the guf ha'isor. It's just whatever flavor would fell into the mixture. And so if we can have someone taste it and they say it doesn't taste like meat, then it would be permitted, even if there isn't shishim opposite the pot.
So he gets rid of that problem. What are you going to say, Joel?
I mean, and that, that allows it to be the cases where, or maybe every case where you're never going to have more contents in the pot than 60, it will never meet 60 times the volume of the pot, right? You can nonetheless still have it be mutar, and therefore the Torah's language is still questionable. So I think like you were saying that, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit.
No, that's good. The Torah's language, the fish sense, the Torah's language is questionable because
he's concocted a case where it can still be mutar, even though it's not a 60-to-1 ratio, which may never be possible in a pot. So
right. And okay, good. What else does he get rid of? He gets rid of throwing in that there was a goof, but the goof dissolved. And you might say, therefore, that gives you time, that gives you just looking at time. But no, since there was a goof there, you still have to have the more strict or the most strict way of looking, and therefore you have to have the shishim. He doesn't give us he's waiting on certain, I think he's waiting in a certain way. But in order to make sure we got it right, let's move to Kedei, let's move to the Bach on the beginning of Tzadi Gimel. So Yavne, would you do that? Would you read that?
Sure. Sure. קדרה שבישל וכולי. כאן סתם רבינו דכל מעת לעת קרוי בת יומא, וכך כתב בסתם בסימן ק"ג, אבל בסימן קכ"א כתב דרבנו תם סובר, כשעבר עליו לינת לילה, אחת שוב אינו בן יומו, ולשם יתבאר בסייעתא דשמיא.
In other words, okay, but we know that Me'leit, in a sense, carries the way, even though you have Rabbeinu Tam, you have Rashi. Although I think it's really good to keep that in your pocket, because if you need to have a heter, it's one of the elements that you can use for a heter. For me, it's a morning day that didn't keep this night, the night ratio, but sometimes even your best, even though, even the ones that you invest in don't necessarily win, but it still remains as a shita. The Hiksha, go on. The Hiksha
בית יוסף דכיוון דתניא קדרה שבישל בבשר לא יבשל בחלב, ואם בישל בנותן טעם, הוא מפרש מפרק גיד הנשה, דהיינו דלתעמק פילה ארמאה, לא הווה לי לכתוב בסתם אסור, דמשמע דלא משכחת לה צד היתר.
Right, so he's saying the same thing that we had. Yeah. But I think it's just good to hear it a second time. And that's why just whenever you're having trouble with the Beis Yosef, it's good to look at the Bach, because the Bach is often a rewording and a very good rewording of that. Okay. Vaha, leta.
והליטה דהאית להיתר איתעמק כפילה.
Right, what are they?
איתעמק כפילה וליקה טעמה. ואף על גב דליקה 60, כיוון דלא נתערב גוף האיסור, אלא טעמו, כי הכא שרי לדברי הכל, כדלקמן בסימן...
Yeah, right, go on.
ונראה דכיוון דלא נהגינן בטעמית, בטעימת כפילה, ובשישים גם כן אין לשער דאין מה שבתוך הכלי 60 כנגד כל הכלי, כדכתב רבינו בסימן צ"ד, עיין שם, ספר התרומות, וכך כתב בסימן קכ"א, לפיכך כתב רבינו בסתם, sorry, just
quotation marks,
אסור.
No, so that we're not going to get, I'm sorry, we didn't do the Baal Yitzer. Well, read it anyway. Well, even though we'll go back to the Baal Yitur. You all saw it anyway. So go ahead. Go on.
והדה כתב בעל העיטור, אם בישל חלב בקדרה של בשר, והיה בן יומו, ויש בה 60, אפשר דמיירי בקדרה חדשה, שבישלו בה דבר ידוע, כגון כזית בשר.
And what is that for us?
It's another example of where we might have a tzad, even if we're not going to trust the kfela.
ואין צורך.
ואין צורך לשער 60, אלא כנגד הכזית, וככתב רבינו.
וכתב רבינו.
וכתב רבינו בסימן צדיד ד' לגבי בצלים וירקות שבלועים מבשר וכולי, וכן בסוף סימן צדיד ח' בסימן ק"ג. אבל בקדרה ישנה, וצריך לשער כנגד כל הקדרה, אי אפשר שיהיה 60 מה שבישלו בה כנגד כולה. אי נמי, אפילו בקדרה ישנה, אלא דידוע מה שבישלו בה בתוך מעת לעת משערים כנגדו.
Whoa. For a moment there, right, we think that he's kind of given up, but he cranks out not only a tzad heter, a pretty big tzad heter, even for Yeshena. For a chadasha, right, no problem, because you know what you put in. And you just bought this pot and you're looking and it's a beautiful pot and everything's great. But he's saying something, giving us a chiddush. Even with Keder Yeshena, the Yadua Masha Bishul Ba B'Toch Me'lei Misharin Kenegdo. There's like a chiddush here. What's he in effect saying about a old pot?
That it's only old, like it still counts as new as long as it hasn't had any, like it's new, its oldness only goes back 24 hours. Yeah.
Now that's going to be a problem. So why even talk about an old pot? And what's even the business about an old pot? So he doesn't, at this point, the Beit Chodesh the Bach doesn't really help us out on that. Although an old pot still has old tricks, and we're going to see, we'll see it pretty soon. But he is poking and probing to find sadei heter, ways of making a heter. So what are sadei heter that we have right now? Yeah, one is how many sadei heter we have?
Ti'imat kfela.
Okay, one, good.
And another,
but we have no kfela today. Okay, two.
Another is knowing how much was in it and counting 60 against how much you knew was actually cooked in it in the last 24 hours.
And
or
three.
Ever.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the third one, or ever. So that's your third one. Okay, because that's for the old pot. And we may still have, despite what I said, we still may have a kafela under certain circumstances that have not been announced here. But like if you have no other recourse, that may very well still hold, and poskim still hold on to it. We saw that in Sarichet. I mean, what's Rav Yosef says in certain situations, when there's a hafsed, meruba, and all you can do in that situation, or shasad chak on top of that, maybe you can still bring a kafela in. Kafela is out as a kafela is out in terms of public policy, but kafela is still there in terms of emergency situations.
Didn't you rely on that once, Rav Landes, in a camp situation or something?
Yes, I did. This camp in which 300 kids, 200 kids, anyway, 200 kids at least, weren't going to get lunch. So, gave it to the guy working the kitchen. What does this taste like? And there was no way. Everything was already washed. No way of figuring out how much. Or at least I couldn't figure out anything. And so that was it. And I asked several poskim if I did right. But of course, I only asked starting poskim if I did okay. But they said it was okay. Okay, fine. That's enough of that. Now, I'm sorry. Lexi, would you take us into the Baal HaYitzur in the tour?
Sure. כתב בעל האיתור, אם בשל חלב בקטרה של בשר והיא בת יומה ויש בה 60, יקמן דאמר מבשל בה ממין שבישל בה עכשיו, כיוון שהתבשיל מותר טעם הראשון בטל, וקטרה נמי מותרת. Keep going or?
No, I want you to tell me why you read it the way you read it, which I think is fine. I'm not sure, but I need an explanation of what's the mahala, what's he saying? Just so
Okay, so the Bala Itor says that if I cooked chalav and b'sari ktera, that was bayoma, and there's yesh bashishim, presumably in whatever way we're measuring the like meatiness, there is shishim connected that in the chalavi dish. There is an opinion that I can now cook again in this pot, like mimin shebishaba achshav, aka I can cook another chalavi thing in this formerly basari pot, because since the thing I just cooked itself, aka like whatever, I just cooked some fettuccine alfredo in my basari pot, and there's like shishim in that fettuccine. The fettuccine itself is permitted. And since that fettuccine itself is permitted and there's shishim in that opposite whatever meatiness that we're measuring, the tam harishon, aka that initial meaty taste, has been bateled, is no longer relevant, and therefore the kedera itself is also permitted.
permitted to finish the sentence.
Permitted to now cook dairy in.
Cook dairy. Okay, so stage one, let's just do the 3 stages I hear. Stage one was what? I'm sorry for being pedantic. Stage one.
Okay, so initially it was a basari pot that had basar cooked within it within the last 24 hours. So we have some amount of basari flavor in this pot. Then I cook my fettuccine. There's 60 times like of the fettuccine of whatever amount of basar was cooked in this pot within the last 24 hours, or whatever, whichever way we're measuring that, as we just learned. There's 60 times that. So that flavor, we're assuming, according to this shita, essentially was expelled, got mixed up in this fettuccine, and was batel. And now my fettuccine is permitted because there is shishim opposite that flavor. And now again, I mean, we'll get more into this in, I think, the Beit Yosef. We're assuming the pot is mutar by virtue of assuming that like the meaty flavor was all expelled into the fettuccine, and presumably that was expelled and it didn't absorb any dairy flavor while there was still meat flavor in it. So what this pot now has is it's expelled all of the meat flavor that was in it into the fettuccine. Maybe it now has some of that fettuccine chalavi flavor in it, which means now I can cook chalavi dishes because now I just have a chalavi pot.
Can you cook fleishik?
No, not
Why
immediately.
not?
Because
Not immediately. Well, we're talking immediately. Why not?
as
if you
in
say-
for mimin
yeah.
shebishal ba'achshav. I mean, as in presumably, I mean, I am also influenced by the Beit Yosef when we see it later, and like also previous sources. If to assume that the pot wasn't like didn't become treif by virtue of it absorbing dairy while it still had meat in it, presumably we have to deal with that whole like lo niach miratichato kind of idea that like it doesn't expel, like so that the pot won't absorb the dairy flavor either while it's still hot.
We
while,
still, right. We
or
still
while-
need more knowledge about what happens with
like-
that, with the fettuccine Alfredo. I forget
Yeah,
his
as
name.
in I can't give you a definite answer depending on what we did with that dairy thing.
Fine,
If we poured
fine,
it out
good.
before it stopped being cooked, then now this might be a par pot.
Okay, so take us now to the Ikaman, Amar.
Ikaman de Amar, Kevan de Kaimalan, Klicheres, Eno Yotze, Midei de Fiav de Olam, Tamarishon, Eno Yotze le Olam, Ve'eno Yochol Vashal Bat, Mimin Shebeshal Ba'achshav, Umimin Harishon, Eno Yochol Vashal Bat, Sharei Ha'achoron, Eno Batel, Ve'en La Takana, Ela Shvira. So the other opinion is that, like, the first opinion was basically relying upon the idea that we could completely expel the initial flavor that had been in the pot. Whereas the second opinion is saying that at least with the klicheres, like it's never going to fully get rid of whatever flavor is there. So even with me cooking this fettuccine, there's still some meat flavor left over in this pot. So I can't cook a chalavi thing in it now. And on the other hand, I can't cook a bisari thing in there now because now there's also chalavi flavor.
V'kotzav hu, who's speaking now? V'kotzav hu, and he says that. Next two words.
V'katav hu is the Torah talking about the Bala Itor.
Okay.
וכתבו שיכול לבשל בה מאיזה מין שירצה. And the Bala Itor says you can cook either mean. You can cook meat or dairy in it now, which is like neither of the opinions that he cited.
So minimally, how would we understand the Bala Itor saying that?
I mean, I remember when I first learned about Itor being pretty puzzled by that, and I think the best explanation is one that I believe the Beit Yosef gives.
So you're talking about, so you're just like the Torah.
No, as in like when I first read it, but as in like I think the Beit Yosef gives a good explanation, or at least if we want to assume the Bala Itor is not just saying like Mishigas, that there is like, reasoning behind this opinion. Presumably you use the argument of saying like, you take the whatever, in this case, I dump out my fettuccine before while it's still hot, like before like niach meritichato, which if we go by that shita, then we could say, oh, well, at that point, it's expelled all of the meat flavor into that dish, but it didn't have the opportunity to absorb the dairy flavor. So if I say that I was able to get rid of the actual mamashut of this tavshil before niach meritichato, then I can say that this kli got rid of its meat flavor if I think like yotzei medofyav, which is against the opinion of the second ikaman da'amar. So if I think it can go out, it goes into that dish, and then this dish didn't have the opportunity to expel its dairiness into the pot, so now I just have a pirate pot.
Okay, but now we'll get nonetheless formally the tamiha, vani tama.
Yeah. V'vani tama, heich mutar levashel b'chalav. How could I cook chalav in this now? V'chi adif mahagala. Zefil hagala lo mahani lekli cheres shepoletz tamid ma'at ma'at. So he's like, I had this initially sorry pot. How are you telling me that after I cook this? And it's also honestly weird that the Torah's confusion is just about cooking whatever. So the Torah is at least surprised that he would think I could cook chalav in this dish now, because so presumably that indicates that maybe he agrees that there's a way in which the dairy tavshil might not have had its dairiness absorbed in the pot, but minimally he's like, we have this opinion with klicheres that like the flavor doesn't fully leave its walls even with hagala.
Right, but his
So, like,
emphasis here is comparing the cooking of the milk product
Yeah, I mean, he's saying like if you have
with
sufficient-
hagala. He compares those
Exactly.
two, right?
He's saying that like if we hold vis-a-vis klicheres, that
Yeah.
even hagala doesn't fully get flavor out of its walls. How like is this cooking of a dish really going to be more effective at getting that flavor out than hagala? Like if we say hagala doesn't do that, then according to his opinion. there's
Okay,
just
go to
like-
base Yosef now. Okay,
Okay, where is it?
let's see, continue. Go to base Yosef.
With katav.
Pasa bala'itor.
כתב האיתור, אם בישך עליו בקדרה של בשר, והיא בת יומה, ויש בה 60, איקמן דאמר ראשל שבישל עכשיו, כולי, ואני תמה, איך מותר לבשל בחלב, וכי עדיף מהגלה וכולי. קשה, דעדיף המיני, הבה ללקשויה לבעל האיתור, שמתיר לבשל בה מאיזה מין שירצה. איך מתיר לבשל בבשר אחר שבישל בחלב בלי הפסק שום תבשיל ביניהם.
Okay, explain the problem.
The Beit Yosef says the thing that I had actually started to remember
Right.
out earlier, which is that like, why is this specifically, why is the idea that the person, like the first Ikaman Amar, the thing that he's like Tama alav, like shouldn't he be even more surprised by the Bal Itor who says you could cook either? Like shouldn't cooking basar there also now be problematic now that I just cooked the chalavi thing in it? And then v'nireh lomar d'lerebuta nakat shutama heach mutar levashel chalav af al pi shekavar bishel b'chalav v'nitma'at tam basar habalu haba v'kol shekain sheyesh litmoa heach mutar levashel basar achar shebishel b'chalav b'li hafsek shum tavshil beinehem. So he's like, well, the Torah just like gave us, like, he chose the case that would enable us to learn his, tmeaness on another thing from it, being like, if he was shocked by the first shita of like, how could you cook chalav, even though you just cook chalav in it, and so now it's mostly a chalavi tasting pot, kol shekain, he is like obviously shocked by the suggestion that you could cook basar in it right after cooking chalav.
Without
Without cooking some other presumably part
some
thing.
absorbent material, probably. What he means.
Yeah.
Now we get into the more interesting part. Maharin Chabib.
מהרי ibn Chaviv כתב שנראה לו שדעת בעל העיטור, אם בישל חלב בקדרה שבישל בבשר, חישיב בישול החלב בה כהגלה, אם ניזהר לשפוך אותו חלב מהקדרה, קודם שתנוח הרתיחה, דמלי מים הבלועים מאיסור, מלי חלב אסור. הלא ודאי כבר הלך לו כל טעם החלב, בין מה שקיבל מטעם הבשר, בין טעם החלב עצמו, הייתי תריד לפלוט לא בעלה.
Okay, stop.
So this explanation of the Bala Itor is that the Bala Itor essentially sees the cooking of that first chalavi dish as hagala.
That's it. Good. That's the definition.
Yeah, that it's hagala and that this is effective because, like, essentially he's assuming that the Bala Itor thinks that you're not eating that first. Actually, no, sorry. You are eating that first chalavi dish because it's got shishim. Just kidding. So you're eating the first chalavi dish because it's got shishim to batel the meat flavor. And if you're careful, you pour that out before it stops.
You can't screw it up. How do you screw it up?
If you screw it up, you leave it on, like you like leave it in the pot like too long, and then the pot will have expelled its like will maybe not have expelled all its bisariness, but will also start absorbing chalavi-ness before having expelled all of the bisari flavor. And now the pot will have chalav and basar in its walls, whatever.
And no longer acting as hagala if you do it. And you have to keep the hagala there. That's really great. And wait a second, whatever. And can you cook basar? And the third stage?
In the first stage.
In the second stage, you cook your lasagna or whatever it was. You cook the fettuccine, the Mexican fettuccine, then you poured it out. It's a lot better, by the way, if you just keep it as halal as opposed to a cheese dish. There's too many practical problems, and stickiness and all that. But if you just have halal and you can just pour it all out, and there's no problem. Now, what can you do? Can you cook fleishik?
Yeah, according to the Bala Itor.
Yeah, according to this, you can cook fleishik. Therefore, the cooking of milk, as you said, is a goal. Okay, the Rabbeinu Yaakov. Who's Rabbeinu Yaakov?
Is this the Re?
The two.
Yaakov Tam? Maybe.
Just a quick question.
Yeah,
So
Yaakov Tam. Rabbeinu Yaakov Tama. Go ahead. He's Tama on the Tamiya of the right. Rabbeinu Yaakov Tama. Love.
You sure it's not the tour?
Isn't that it?
Oh, you're right. Absolutely. Sorry.
I mean, it's odd for him to say that, but it still sounds like it's just the tour here.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. I apologize. Go on. Let's see. Continue. Rabbeinu Yaakov Tama. Love.
משום אפילו אם תרצה לומר שלא נשאר בקדרה טעם חלב, לפי שנשפך בעוד הרותח.
Right, so it's gone.
Right, so he's like, even if you say the whole like pouring it out while it's still boiling prevents the pot from absorbing chalavi flavor, אבל טעם הבשר שקבלה תחילה לא יצא כולו, ויקנתיו לבשל בחלב עד כאן. So then like we explain the Torah is like, then you don't actually have to necessarily explain it as like a revuta that the Torah was teaching. Maybe the Torah specifically thought that it was problematic to cook chalav, because he's like, maybe the pot didn't absorb any chalavi flavor, but it won't have expelled all of its bisari flavor.
All right, the stage one is not finished. The stage one is not finished. Stage two is 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 finished. Stage two but I'm not sure why not. I mean, if you say it's like Hagala, why not? Why not the Basar should be gone? In other words, I'm really more on the Ba'aliter side on this. Okay, so just leave that as a question. Vim Tomar.
How does this work with different materials? Like, is the Balita only talking about metal?
I think there's problems with all other material. No. Oh, do you mean Yerakot and stuff like that?
No, I'm talking about cheres, kli cheres versus kli matechet.
Talk about what?
If it's ceramic.
Oh.
Is this assuming that it's not ceramic?
Fully clarified this. In other words, they haven't talked about this enough. We're going to get to it with the other Rishonim pretty soon. He hasn't fully clarified it. It works with shataf. I mean, with stuff that rinses off, basically matechet or something like matechet. But it doesn't work for ceramic. You're right. Vim Tomar. Let's finish this up. Vim Tomar.
משמע מדברי בעל האיתר, דאפשר בחלב שבקטרה יהיה 60 כנגד כל הקטרה, מדברי רבינו באורח חיים, בשם הראש, וגם מדברי, זה בעל האיתר שכתב רבינו סימן שאחר זה, משמע
זה בעל התשומה, so right. שאחר זה משמע.
משמע דאין ממש בתוך הכלי 60 כנגד כל הכלי. So
Yesh, like, what do we do with the shishim problem? Yesh,
right, like if your thing is like, oh well, maybe the Baal HaItor's answer is that there'll be shishim opposite the entire pot. Like we said at the estimate, impossible. Yesh lamar d'ifshar the Baal HaItor savar karavad the lama sharinan b'kulei kli elav ma'idin afak minei hu demesharinan kmo shechtov b'siman tzadichet.
So what's the nafak minei? What's the nafak minei?
So in that case, it would presumably be like related to what we were saying earlier. This would presumably have to either be like, I know the amount of meat that was like cooked in it earlier, and so I can measure with just that, or that I have a kfela who can like taste it essentially.
When it says b'mai de nafik minei.
Yeah, as in we like literally translated, it's like what the pot would have expelled. But as in, how are we going to measure that versus just measuring the entire pot? Presumably, it would have to be either with timat kfela or with knowing how much basar had been cooked.
So what he doesn't say here is you have to make a guess, an informed guess. I mean, that's the only way of saying it. I think, besides for those other possibilities that we know how much, or but in that case, you would have to say he makes an informed guess. Inami.
Inami b'shiyada shior habasar. Oh, well, there we go. Shni bashelba ire bala itor. The kokahai gavna l'diver hakol lo misharinan b'kulei kli. So one of the
that gives us
the he gives as another right. Explanation that, like, as you were saying, implying that nafak mineh implies more of a guesstimation. Then maybe we don't have to guesstimate. Maybe we know how much meat was cooked in it, and so we can just measure against that.
So all these are svaras, and now he comes up with a material answer as well. A reality.
So maybe I have a really wide and really thin walled kedera that actually could hold 60 times its mass.
So we've had our answers. We've had the tzad we still don't know exactly between the ceramic and the metal. Let's see what everyone else says. Let me read for a while, and you guys correct me, okay? I'll ask you to help me and correct me. V'rav Rabbeinu Peretz kotav afil eina bat yoma ubishul b'chalav oser achakach v'vashel ba b'tchila lo basar v'lo chalav l'fishu balua mi basar b'chalav. L'chatchila you can't. Ela im hi shom atachas. Now he gives us our distinction. Yagilena la'achar me'lei shel bishul sheni. But I want to talk about the beginning. He says you can't do this usher to do it unless it's matechet, right? You can't do it because it's below me basar v'chalav. And he says, right, when he says at the beginning, Rabbi B'Kotav afil eino bat yoma ubisho bo chalav aser achel levashel bo bitchila. What do you mean by bitchila? What does that word mean? Bitchila. I don't think he says liftchila. He's saying bitchila lo basar v'chalav because it's bolua mi basar v'chalav. Is he saying at all? But he says bitchila. Bitchila seems to imply that later on you can. When could you do that later on? What? I didn't catch this.
I think bitchila here means before me 8 la-8. So like within 24 hours. Those first 24 hours you can't do it, but after the 24 hours you could.
Interesting. I didn't think that would solve it. Anybody else?
I understood it as 24 hours and a little more because he's saying so after the 24 hours, the beginning part of like after 24 hours, that's where he's saying you can't do it.
Okay.
He could just, I mean, you could just read this as lechatchila though. I mean, it's the same language. Right?
Well, which would mean that b'diavad what? It's kosher?
It could be. I mean, because remember,
in other words, that lechatchila you can't do it, but b'diavad it's kosher. Whatever it's kosher, feel in about yoma b'shel b'chalav aser achakach levashel bo b'tchila. It could mean lechatchila lo basar v'lo chalav because it's bolua from the basar b'chalav, but you can still use that the whole sort of argument of it's roteach and it's folate and it's not bolea. It's already bolua, but it's not bolea anymore.
Mm-hmm. And also
it's not a problem, and if it's there, he goes there. So I don't know. I think I'm going to go lechatchila. Batchila is lechatchila.
Rav Landes is also he might be talking about both cases, but he is specifying something about the case where the first cooking of the basar was more than 24 hours ago too, or it was in a bat yoma case. So the basar,
right? Okay, good.
Basar boom.
So good. Now by doing that, what has he done to our status about the pot? Remember earlier on, we said we didn't understand why the pot's even mentioned. An old pot is even mentioned because notein tam lifgam. But he says something to us here. It's bolua. It's bolua with basar. It's bolua b'chalav. Therefore, it's like you can't say it's a nothing. You can't say it's a nothing. Part of this is that it could very well be the notein tam lifgam is really a b'diavad itself and not a lechatchila. That then if you say it's mutter, but even that is kind of like in sense of b'diavad situation. If you add basar to an old pot, could very well be, according to Rabbeinu Peretz, you add basar to an old pot, then you kind of, I don't want to use the word reignite, but you kind of, you're mishatef with the old basar, or you're mishatef with the old cholav, and you're in big trouble. Could be that's what he's saying. And therefore, look at the end of the paragraph of the Beit Yosef, the little paragraph on Rabbeinu Peretz. Simba, avo yerokot umine kitnios mutar levashal ba. It says again, he gives a reason there. But yerokos umine kitnios, part of the stuff will just absorb what's there, and you've now come to a situation of a clean sweep. And therefore, then afterwards, I would say, according to Rabbeinu Peretz, that he would say, yes, you can't cook basar, you can't cook chalav because you're going to start your problems of basar b'chalav once again. But if you cook up your beans, you cook that stuff up, you get rid of the pot becomes mutter. It's a hagala. There's no problem.
I don't think he's necessarily saying it's a hagala. I think he's saying that like.
Wait, because he doesn't say the
could-
word hagala. I'm
No,
throwing in the word hagala.
Not even throwing in the word. I think he's
Yeah.
saying like my read of it would be he's not necessarily saying anything about the capacity of cooking to like clear out flavor. I think he could be saying like he might hold that like it's a like mideh dofil v'olam, but he thinks that like cooking par of stuff in this from now on is fine, but that I have no way of like koshering.
You're saying stage 3?
Yeah, I'm saying that like after I had cooked chalav in this bisari, like eno ben yomo bisari pot, I can't cook like the way I read Rabbeinu Peretz was that I can't cook like whatchamacallit, meat or dairy in it at all from now on. I just have a parv pot. Because otherwise,
It has,
the same as the
well,
rest.
it functions as a power pot, that's what you're saying.
Yes, as in
It's
it's a pot that I can only cook parv in.
Your pot, you can only cook power of it. Well, that for sure, he says, yeah.
As in like
Any
I
other
think
comments on this?
indefinitely,
Yeah.
as in not just the first time, but I think
So
like,
you're saying this is you're saying that this is already, well, third stage, fourth stage, it goes on. It goes on to when? It goes on until.
like if he thinks that Hagala isn't sufficient for
Arba
Tiferes,
shows.
then forever.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, I don't have anything more to say. I'll leave it there. I still thought it was on the second stage. Let's go to the Rashba. I have a question there. I'll leave it as a question. Now, Kosav a Rashba, Sheim Bisha Yerakal Pekader Shal Basar Shemutu Vashal Ba'achar Kach Gevina. That would be second stage, what the Rashba is saying. And the second stage, that's what you've done. Then on the third stage, you can do Gevina. Zel Hashem, B'tros Chata, Sa'aruch, B'sof Bayat Revish, Shaninu B'vidada, Hashipud, is from Gemara Avodah Zarah, Hashipud V'Askala, the two, whether it's a net or kind of a net device, or whether it's a regular Shipud. Malabni B'ur, V'amrin Allah, the Gemara, Romile, Rav Amram, Rav Sheshes Tanan, Hashipud V'Askala, Malabnim V'Atanya, Gabe Kodshim, Hashipud V'Askala Magilim, Uparik Rava, Kodshim Hainu Taima, Techol Yom Ose Giul Chavero, because that's the halacha that for Masa Karbonos, and you can find it in the Rambam Masa Karbonos, that you have to do basically a Hagala every day. Since there's a Hagala every day, you don't need in Kodshim a libum per se, because they're keeping it pretty clean. That's the best way of saying it. Even though you say it gets dirty every day, it doesn't get ingrained because there's a new Hagala every day when they do the new set of Korbanos. Well, that's the case. Why would you not even need, why? The Kushia, Shamir Mihar Dechol, Shabisho Bola Achar Mikan, Nifla Bimenu Isur, the Nichshar Lagamre, right? When you've had this cooking up, Asha Hikshu Amai Tani Bevraisa Magilin, Share Nigal Babishul Shal Yom Shani, the Nichshar Lagamre. So why would you need any formal Hagala? You wouldn't. Fakashali Tuva V'chi Adi Bishul the Yom Sheni Ma'agala Gemura. Why is Hagala? Hagala is not as good. I'm sorry. The Bishul. The Bishul of the Korban, which functions just like Hagala, but isn't Hagala Gemura a much stronger form. We've had this question. V'im hagol gemura hazeh hava kashalei l'Rav Amram hech mashirato hech machshirato ma ha'ita shuvato shel Rabba damar b'chol yom v'yom nasa giyul. There was a hagala. V'alo libun hu tzarech. Then you kamosha shaninu in the Mishnah. Basically, they come down to, they say, Kaimalon b'choy matechot cham mixato cham. Excuse me, cham mixato cham kulo. Sha isur hanivla mitpashet b'chol hakli. The near lo the hachikam nearly the hachikamar to kachim hatera bola. The kaven should be shvil bo kodem shivoli day iser notar l'shiagia zamano liyot chal shem notar kavar niklash v'nechalash ha'Iser kach chasav kach chasav no kach what what's the chaf chaf al yedei bishul zeh hasheni actual nishar bo ella. Yeah, what he's saying here is another way of looking at things is that we've been talking about absolutes, and therefore an absolute is a hagala. These other notions of using milk, that's how I'm understanding it, that you cook up the milk and consider it as if it's hagala. It's not a hagala. It's milk. It's kind of a bishul. The whole thing that we have in Kodshim, that we say every day we have a form of Hagala when we cook up the next batch of the korban, we clean it off, we have the next batch. How does that function as a real Hagala? So the answer is, let's see if I still did the question. Hello, libu tzarech moshe sheniv mishlatinu v'libu few hanishatzot mitnat zim heimenu. You need sparks flying up. V'od ha'kaim alon b'chlei matechot cham mixato cham kulo. I read this already. Sha'isra nivla mitpashet b'chol hakli v'nir leid ha'chikamar. Dekachim hetera bala. That the kachim, when it became the Eastern notar, only comes at the end of a period of time. But when it was being infused with the essence of the korban, it was being infused with a devar mitzvah, a devar heter. The kavan should be shilbo kodem shivoli de iser. But every day when it was their mevashel what? They're mevashel something stuck inside or attached to it, to the shipud or to the net, the metal net. They're eradicating what? They're eradicating a devar mutar. It's going to be a devar asur. But it's not yet a devar asur. It's only asur when it becomes a notar. When it's a notar, then you could probably be talking that in order to do it, you really need a major hagala. Or in fact, maybe you need a milibun to take care of it. But if you're getting rid of the devar mutar, you don't need such a strong effect. All you need is the washing that takes place. The nearly. The nearly the hachikamar the kachim heterabola the kivit bishel bo kodem shiaboli day Eastern notar. It's not yet usher. Well, shiagia zamano liyot chal shame notar when it will be called notar. That will be given that honor, that distinction, that naming. Kavar niklash v'nechalash ha'isur. The Isur has already been softened, nechalash, because it's been washed out, it's been used, and it's been washed out, it's cooked up. And niklash Isur means the Isur itself has been thinned out. The real Isur in that case of notar, is mamish to have a lot of stuff there. But when you've done this kind of cooking, there is no problem of notar. Okay? Nachash iser kolkach al yedei bishul zeh hasheni achelo nishar bo ella bella muat. Yes, there is something still left there that's also, there is still something that has been absorbed. The ein roy lachul love shem notar al davar balua muat. Now this is talking about culture, but what's really happening here is they're finding a precedent of not just saying mutter or usser. They're talking about an isur that's losing its power. And the Kachim case brilliantly is used as a situation of how the isur gets weaker and weaker and weaker, so that even though technically there may be something still there, we can't really refer to it as an isur on the same level. This is good to see inside. The matter of basar b'cholav. The dogim shalu b'kara shal basar. Right? The whole case, I have to go through with you at that case, right? It was a meat plate, and the plate had sully on it, the basar sully, and it's kind of like thrown off. And now fish from the griddle is thrown on it. And then can you take this fish and put it into the yogurt mixture, the kutach? Can you do so? Yes, you can do so. Why? Because it's not barnat. At some point, it's just, and when he's talking about not barnat, what's not barnat according, what's the sadashava here with Kachim? What's the sadashava here? It's a weakened, not barat means a weakened isur. That technically you can still say, excuse me?
As in part of the distinction is that it actually never really gets to isur, right? That it's like individually heter flavors that are weakened so much that it never really becomes isur in the first place.
Well, they'll make a reference to that. But that which could become an isur has been lessened in terms of its basar status. Shol b'kar shel basar shemuter lachon b'kutach mishum shekevan shetam habasar shel koltu hadogim, because, right, minakara, that meat flavor that the fish got through, it's very important, through the plate, right? Niklat v'nechalash kolkach kodim shivo lidei isur basar b'cholav. That's your punchline. Before it gets to isur basar b'cholav, you calling this meat or you calling this meaty? It is weak, weak, weak. V'chein habela shenitpashet b'chol hakli eino ela davar muat. It's also that what has passed through the kli is a davar muat. The bishul zeh hasheni afal pi she'ena ur magil akul. You can say, well, it's not very good because the flame is not getting to everything, so therefore, why are you kashrim? Mikomakom gam hu ayidei cham mixato cham kulo, even though they're still still hot. Meat ma'et katzat ad shalom nishar b'chol hashipud shum bella. All right. In other words, nothing's left of the infusion, but he's saying nothing, it means very little is left. He says it. Shum bella sheyeh ro'ui l'chol love shem notar. Aval kolab shebishel bo shenit habella. No, before that, habella merubah. V'ro'ui l'chol love shem notar b'toch dofnei akli. V'chein kli shabola iser gomer la'olam. Ein achshar ad sheyagil haro'ui lahagil v'yalbin et shero'ui la'bein demichilato iser gomer hoya. But if you had the pork and you'd say, well, can't that be nechalat? No, this was the iser gomer. In that case, it already had the shem iser and it had the mamashuta being usher, and therefore the only way to get rid of it is take out the blowtorch and do it that way and get rid of it. They're going to say about Kachim, there's a different issue because anyway, but you have to do it the full way. The Achani Flat Nigala Gamre, Isur Mikri. It started as an Isur and it continues as an Isur. But the Basar B'chalav, Basar's mutter, didn't start as an Isur. And with the Kachim, Notar, it started as a mitzvah, didn't start as an Isur. Lafikach Afal Pi, Shebishal Bo, La'achar Mikan, Pamo Shtayim, Ein Yotzim Bidei Dapav, Achi Galenu Kedarko. Ve'im Davar Shedarko Labein, Achi Labein, The Hilkach, Kol Shabala Heter, Kugon Shipud or Kedera Shal Matechet, Shabishal Bo Basar, which is Davar Mutter. The Achar Kach, Bashal Bo Yurakoto the game also Heter. Hare Niklash, Bella Habasar Shabo, Asha Ein Ro'ui, Lachu Olav, Shame Isur. Can't call it an Isur. Shame Isur Basar B'cholav. Umuter Lavashel Do Gavina. But now he's going to say to the ends that Kalim are different. Kalim will be more careful. Hashem Ro'il Chol of Shame Isur Basar B'cholav. Umuter Lavashel Do Gavina. Aval Kli Shabala Isur Gomer. Excuse me. What does it say about him? But a cleave, just repeating himself, a cleave that has in itself an Easter gomer, it has the pork inside. Ein nishar le'olam achech hirenu hechsher gadol. This is one of his phrases. So niklash, nechalash is one phrase that's important to know. Achi hechsher hechsher gadol, kidinan etcher darchen la'agil yagil, etcher darchen la'ben yal'ben, umashma de bishil. The Bashal Ba in this Kedera, Yirakot, the Nokar Rashba, Lav Dach, the Wadim, here Tich Ba Mayim, Ella Urcha Diara. You know, he's just giving an example of when you boil up. But the boiling up alone, the Easter goes into the water, get rid of the water, and you're done. She'ain Derech Tich Mayim in Lovashel Shum Davar. So he gave an example. I'm sorry, let's take a break. Here, a break. Thank you. 5 minutes. Okay. Josh, you there? I'm looking at the people that aren't there. Look at the end of the Ikal Medak, 3 lines from the paragraph. Talk about the difference between the Rashba and Baal Yitur. That's not my interest right now. So Abu Shemaya.
Sorry, still not responding quick enough to that.
Yeah. So this is, am I pronouncing it right, Shemaya?
Yeah, that's like Shema Naftalyon, exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Abu Shemaya, please, Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
Okay. We want pics. You didn't send pictures out.
I'll send a picture out.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
very small, but we'll send a picture out.
Oh, send a small picture. Now look, right where you see Rabbeinu Yerucham, 3 lines up. Umiu equal a Meimar. I don't care right now about the question that he says something now very important. Umiu equal a Meimar.
Oh, no, I do not see it. I see the Ikal Medak.
That's where you see Rabbeinu Yerucham is
Oh,
should
yeah.
be true. Really. Yeah.
Rabbeinu Yerucham Katav Divrei Rashba.
Right above that. In other words, 3 lines up in the paragraph before. You guys see it? The rest of you see it?
No, I'm not even sure. Where are we looking in the Beit Yosef?
Yeah.
Well, we're still looking at Beit Yosef. The next paragraph is in the block is Rabbeinu Yerucham. Before that, 2 or 3 lines up, there's a conclusion. There's a conclusion to a discussion, and he says, actually, there's a period. At least in my text. Miu equal a meimar delo mahani.
I got
I
it.
see it.
Now, remember what we were talking about. We were talking about something which we really, I think, is kind of new for our conversation, or maybe we'll rediscover it elsewhere, of Niklash, the Nechlash, is that the Easter, if you're obsessive, can still be said is there, but it's so weakened, it no longer has, it is really prescriptor, it no longer has the shame Easter. You called that out, that's what he's saying. And now he's going to continue this in one more fashion. Umihu ikolamemar, go ahead.
Umihu ikalamemar delo mahane tama denechlash v'niklash tam hayisor ayode bishul ze hasheni ela bikli shatash biliatan muetet aval lo bikli cheres.
So there's a new thing about, it's already the setup. Already the setup and making that distinction, Yavdi, the material distinction. That it doesn't go far. It washes, most of it washes off at the very beginning. So there's, how much was, so there's a Blia Muetas, and it's giving a Metzias also understanding of what material understanding what takes place, which is a Velobichi Cheres, go on.
Velobichi Cheres Shaliato Meruba, Ad Shamrubo She'eino Yotze Midei Depiv Leolam. V'kevan sheken afilu achar hagala gemura harehu kekli shataf shelo hugal klal v'lo bishlu bo yarkot shasort levashel bo chalav.
Okay, so it doesn't help you, and we break it, and that's the idea. So, but it's nechlash and niklash, all sorts of reasonings here. Verabina Yerucham, I'll go on. Kotav, no, I'm going 2 more lines down from there. And he says, Lefiza, just where it says Lefiza Tzarech Lomar. It's like after Rabbeinu Yerucham, a line or 2 down. Lefiza, maybe it's only 1 line down. Lefiza Tzarech Lomar Shehu Sover.
You want me to keep reading?
Yeah, you read.
All right. Lefiza Tzarich Lomar Shehu Sover Del Korchach or Del Ken Lo Sharei Harashba Ela Shebivishel Adkan.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Adkan
lo shari Rashba. So far he didn't go.
Oh, he didn't permit it. Ela shebivashel ba yerakot ukiyotze bahen. Aval bivashel ba chalav lo. The afagav the kol she'ena bat yoma o shesh chalav shishim kevan the chalav share havale kivishel ba yerakot.
Yeah, so what's the problem? Why is he saying this whole thing is no good? Got a very interesting point here. Mikol makom,
kevan de chalav hu asor b'basar eino bedin shehu hagorem heter lekaderet basar levashel b'chalav. So it's because it's mixing is what creates the problem. It can then not be an agent for creating a permission.
Yeah, this is so. Reflect for a moment. What kind of argument is this, or where does this argument fall?
So I think it's a logical argument more than anything else.
It's what?
It's like a logical argument more than anything else. Something that which prohibits can also permit.
Okay.
Fine.
I wasn't thinking of that way. Anybody else? That's great. Maybe we'll go with it. Anybody else?
It's a don't be ridiculous argument. That's how I read it.
Yeah, okay, but give the full sentence. Don't be ridiculous.
Like that there isn't so much of a specific logical argument. It's just like, it doesn't seem to make sense to use chalav to get rid of, yeah.
I was thinking about this in like, if we go out of the basar b'chalav case, if you imagine you wanted to kasher a pot and you cooked like pork soup in it and you poured the soup out before it cooled down, theoretically that would kasher it, but that feels incongruous with the whole system at that point, right? It's
except wait. Except that in and of itself, that's an Easter Gomer.
It is an Easter Gomer. Yeah, that's true. But here there's no B'liav, the Easter Gomer. You're right. So there would have been Easter Gomer in there in the first place. It's a good point. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But so I think this whole section has nuances, but not nuances for more chumras necessarily, or just chumras as opposed to mutter v'asur in general, different ways and different gradations. And Noam, do you would you agree with Yavni? This is like, don't be ridiculous when you're saying about logic, or would you want to make it illogical? I can't hear.
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Don't be ridiculous argument is the same thing as an argument from logic.
Okay, fine. Okay, Inami. Go on, Inami.
Inami, didafka b'mayim hu, the ka'amar harashba shesh bahem koach la'klish la'chlish, b'la ha'isor, aval chalav ein bo koach la'klish, kokach b'la ha'isor. So it's a material.
Yeah, that's very helpful. These 3 or 4 lines are very important in kind of argumentation. Once you get to the notion of haklish, lahaklish, then that kind of opens the notion as like, what's happening? What's going on? And to use milk for this purpose it seems to be problematic. It doesn't seem to be machlish anything. More milk you use seems to be mechazek, to use it on the logical side. Umihu midivrei Tosfos.
Umihu midivrei hatosafot v'harosh b'per kol basar mashma deleilahu ha da'arashba deleilahu la da'arashba shekatvu b'shmata dedagim shalu b'ka'ara hahi b'sof avoda zara d'chol yom nase gi'ul l'chavero tama mishum demim b'mino batel barov v'deraita v'kli mikodesh okmuha adaraita. V'chen katvu
Mikdash. Uklei
mikdash okmuha adaraita.
And so therefore all our amounts, it's a very good chiddush. And it's not such a chiddush. I mean, we normally say it. The mikdash always doesn't have drabbanans in the mikdash. No gezeras there, no that. It's like, excuse me, pure Judaism. It's just deraisa. That's what it seems. Right. That's besides when I get excited and I'll say pure Judaism is drabbanans, but here Mikdash, just deraisas, no playing around, no social manipulation, etc. Just trying to do it that way. That's what I want to do there. That's what I want to say there. Okay, let's go down to the second last little paragraph. Kosa Bagos Share Dura, the Shema Mordechai. Joel, would you read that?
Sure. Katav behagot shari dura b'shem Mordechai perek ein mavidin hitir ri
halavan, early Tosfos.
Yeah. Basar shenit bashel b'kedera shel chalav v'haya ba chalav kol halayla kodem ve'amar kivan debalua pam rishona ushniya ushlishit mikodem lachen lo bala halayla klal. All right. V'chalav shebala mikodem lo asar denoten tam lifgamhu adkan. It's like incredible.
Explain this.
Right. So if you have a milk pot, right, and you had milk sitting in there all night, the night before, but he says that since it had multiple times when before this that it had absorbed milk, that night it didn't absorb any of the milk, and therefore all the milk flavor is not tam lifgam, and you can, if you cook basar in it.
Yeah, it's again a nuanced understanding. Continue. Katav Rabbeinu Yerucham.
Katav Rabbeinu Yerucham. Im ira yoresh shel basar roteach l'toch klin. It's a nechoshet shel chalav. All right, so you have you pour from a meaty cauldron, really hot meaty cauldron, into a milk cauldron.
Made of nechoshes.
I was tokli nechoshet. Yeah. Okay. Of nechoshet. Ein tzarich hagala. Why? Techli nechoshet lo bala. Ela im ken haor melech tachtav, right? So I can remember bronze, copper. I always mix up those two. I think they're the same thing, maybe. But right, that doesn't. It only absorbs in the case where it literally is on the fire. Right.
I don't know where they got this. Is also material definition, but it's also giving us a tzad heter. All the way through, they're giving tzadei heter. For katan shkein skuma poskim v'tikul mikama duchte umiu continue.
Okay, so a lot of people agree with this. Umihu la Rashba shesover dafilu kli sheni eno mevashel mikol makom mavliu maflitu k'mo b'siman b'siman kuf hey mashmed tzarich hagala. But the Rashba, who thinks he splits. We've seen this a few times. He splits the idea of bishul and mavliu maflit, right? That those are two different things. That you cannot do bishul, but you could still exude and absorb flavor, and therefore you still need hagala.
Because our havamina is, or mostly, I think most of the shitas would seem to say, it only comes with bishul.
Exactly. That's the
way. Here we're talking about, in this little sections we did right now, we're talking about kavisha as a word, although they don't use the word kavisha, and when kavisha stops, because no more entrance, we're full up. We can't take any more milk in, and it goes only up to that point. How do you decide on that? I don't know. We have this, and we have this notion of klina choshes. Klina choshes doesn't absorb unless it has the ur underneath, unless you have that situation.
But can I jump in here for a second? Wait, by the way, I think this is an interesting point. Here we're seeing, like, this is the only time that I know of, I mean, I don't know a lot, but that I know of that we're distinguishing between like an iron pot, which would absorb in balua, in irui, and some other kind of metal. And I wonder if this is a source for being lenient on stainless steel.
Exactly. It's written here in my book. I wrote it down. Exactly. No, it's the main. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's I mean, not only that, it makes it sound poshut.
But I'm pointing out, if you boil it, it would still absorb. It's just saying that in irui, it's not absorbing. In pouring from
the irui is not absorbing.
In irui, but we can go one more step and say maybe stainless steel. In other words, I'm just saying here we're seeing something that is, we're saying not all metals are created equal, which is
very good. But I want to say with you, we've now, learning this page, have become re-educated to notions of nuance. It's not just all or nothing. And the little bit may be nothing, meaning, usually say all or nothing, just a little bit is everything. But here, not a little bit, maybe nothing. Really, just nothing. And what it can be the decisive point, has it acquired the shame? Now, who gives something the shame? So let me just suggest there's something popular here about this notion. There's something that has to do with what people refer to this as the Isur or not. And if they don't, I'm suggesting, then it doesn't have a shame. Or it's so little, I'll retreat only half a step, or it's so little that no one should give it the shame. That's really a retreat from what I said, but can you say that? Now there's one more piece I want to do here, and please go to the Bach. And the Bach, depends what kind of, it's the last major section of the Bach. It doesn't have, as far as I know, where it says V'masha kotav arashba or masha amar arashba aval bela devor isur elam hu be'isura. Right? You see that? Okay, so now go like 3-4 lines after that. Maybe it's 3 lines after that. There is a colon. V'zel lashon hagos shari dura. Okay. Noam, you got it? Okay, Josh, you have it? Andre, okay. V'zeh lashon hagosh aridura siman lamed hey. Kisui mekadera shel basar v'samu oto al kedera cholevet aser hakol. The ain't shaykh notein tam lifgam sharaticha ola b'nogat b'kisui tadir ubolat anasa ben yomo hutak mekovetz ad kan l'shono. So what's happening with the problem with the kisui? There's a constant reticha, and therefore there's a constant problem of something going up. We're going to discuss it. Something going up and touching the kisui and making the kisui usher, and the kisui is now ben yomo who attack mekovetz. Anybody know what that means? Who attack? I think it means who attack mekovetz is. It is, oh, you have it, Joel?
No, I'll let you go. I had a thought on it, but I'm gonna refer to
Utak
that.
mekovetz means it is been separated from collection. And what it's going to say is really hard to clean because the key, and he's going to talk about different types of kisuim, and some of them are like really hard to clean, and it's always bubbling up. And so you have that stuff going up, and therefore you're going to have a problem with basar b'cholav because you had the basar going up and going up and going up, and you have a hard time getting it out. In other words, they're making worse than ben yomo. It is like super problematic. Umihu dafka shehirticha alta acha kisui ata kisui, but it has to mean there was a reticha going on, so it gets up to the kisui. Acha kisui haya mazia, so the kisui itself is sweating. It looks like it's sweating. Halav hachi eno oser afil haya ben yomo, but since it was separate. And it didn't have that problem of the zaya getting up there, then it would be mutter. Amnam davar koshehu lahashchit mamonam shel Yisrael. But you know, he's reflective now. This is the posek talking to you. You know, this is a really hard thing to destroy the money or to waste the money of Israel. Bichdei alpi kitzatz svora, because you have a little bit of a svora. Beli raya, there's no proof. There's no earlier Rishonim who talk about this. Lomar, to say well d'ofisher tiach olet tadir umazia, because it's to say since it's bubbling. Where's the proof? Where's the raya? It's a little bit of it's a svora, he says. And here he's saying, svara is not great. I mean, it's going to cost people money. Ola tadir mazia nidbaka zeya bechoza. So that zeya never leaves. It's like real. The kid's kind of funny. As if it is mamish be'en. Mamish oily or oil or schmutzy. The notein tam l'shevach, and it's good for the food because it's it's the cooking up stuff. Afal pi she'eno ben yomo, even when it's not ben yomo, we're treating it like ben yomo. But he says, how do you do this? Are you really, because of the story, you're going to do this? So some want to say, no, it doesn't refer to a metal or a ceramic cover. It refers to a doughy cover. That you stop up the kedera. Yeah, it helps the butt, that time that goes into the butzik is wonderful. The dafka belua, b'chliet sumatechot. But if you had a cover made out of wood or made out of metals, chashuv lifgam achar me'et leit. But for the butzik, it's taken in the flavor. Avaloba butzik. That's not the same time with gam. That's actually a good time. Valkain ein lahachmir bekusi yoter mishar kelim shenam b'nei yomin. Therefore, you shouldn't be machmir on kisui for all these reasons. Ksheheim nikiyim, but they have to be clean. Ve'bam shum mamashut. There's no food that's actually stuck there. Ein shum mamashut isur the sharin lahu. The age behem shumamashut isur. In that case, sharin lahu eitz or matechot, because it's no taint time with gam, and the hachinami gabi kisui. Same thing would be for kisui as any other appliance. V'chein hi dat marshal v'harav v'hagos shulchan aruch b'toras chatos. Shalola hachmir bakach, you should be okay. The gamanochi nimshachachti achareim. I also don't want to be machmir ad ata until now. You ever talk to Talmid Chacham and Psak, and they say to you, I used to be matir things. Then wait for the next line. I used to be matir that. Yeah. And you give the reasons why it's matir. Adata. Denira lania stati. Shahara zu yesh lo yesod. Actually, I don't think it's from nowhere. This whole thing about the kisui. Al pi perish Rabbeinu Tam. Shakasa v'tari sahad the Tanya. You had the fat tail, and you wiped you oiled up the tanur with it. Koha pas asura. The pot is every pot is usher. Actually, yasiket the tanur until you burn out the tanur. Takasha lomali actually yusak the kinuach. No, it's actually yusak. So it's a problem for me. Why is it actually yusak until you burn it out? B'chinuach sagi. Why not just wipe it down? The two lo havi ella kenote tam bar noten tam. The tetra bin tam. The shuman sha'al acheres eno yochol likaneh. Big problem with the pottery stuff, with the pottery. Because it's really hard to get it clean. Umikan lamdu, I know this. 2 weeks ago, Cheryl maybe do all the plates over again from Shabbos, the next Shabbos. You didn't put your finger on it, and all of a sudden you're feeling something, right? Umikan lamdu kisui shacheres. Same thing that should apply this. So I really we learn it, but I learned it for myself. The afla ro rabotenu shacholkim mateus Rabbeinu Tam, the tosim iker the cheres nami mitkaneach. Even those are all that, you can clean it up. The v'furish b'divrei harosh v'haran the yiboyer b'sov Siman tzadiyei. So why not go with these guys? Besides the shmaya mikom makom, the kisui shacheres. Shehirticha olav nogat the kisui tadir. He's going back to the shita that he got rid of. That he says, but when you have a kisui of cheres, that the boiling is always going up, and it's always going there. Aja zeya nidbeket. This zeya is like stuck there. The eno yachali kaneach, and you can't really clean it. Chashuv kol kisui kilo have ben yom of oser ad shishim. Now, when he says enu yacholi kaneach, I believe what he's saying is it's very hard to reach. He's going to talk about that. It's just very hard to get you already have certain items that are really hard to clean up. The Kavan Shane Bishum Kedei Rav Shishim Keneged Akusri. Also call it Tafshil. Getting down to halacha here. Umiu Akol Lafi Hakisui Yosheno Chadash. But I have to tell you, there is something here. There is a nuance. He says, "Umishenu baki al yozuz v'minhag ba'alei hora'a katonim." You know, go with your forefathers, foremothers. Shechmiru mihu nira the Africa dera shacheres kevin shakotav arosh surach yomar bori li shalohayash shum shuman davuk ba. You have to be able to say, I am totally convinced and I affirm there is no stickiness there. There's no shuman there. Alma, he says that. We learned this, right? We learned this from the Rush by saying is if you say borily, that means in general, you're not borer. She'ena shuman yochali kaneach mimenu. Srichim Gamkein Morei Hora'ah. Therefore, they need rabbis like you guys. L'dakte Karbe, Af B'kedei Rot Shelcheres, Sheinam B'nei Yomon, Imlo Davuk Mina Machal, Ki Ro Pa'amin Nidbach B'chosek. By the way, saying if you're really checking and it's not there, then it's going to be kosher. Ki Ro Pa'amin Nidbach B'chosek Ayidei Ha'ur, Shenisraf Ha'machal, V'nidbach B'cheres. Inami, to have a kederi shenash ba tuva b'efshar likaneach yafa, because it's just an old pot. You'll never get it clean. So he went from not holding by absorption of this zaya to being convinced of it, and you have to prove, and it's guilty. The kisui is guilty unless it's proven innocent. Yeah, moving.
So from a practical standpoint, what happened today with dishwashers, where we could say with like almost certainty that it's clean? Like, could we say the halacha is way different today now that we know how to clean things properly?
Man, what's that? You're saying all dishwashers work out fine?
Yeah. And
I
also,
think,
it's not that time come automatically because like the dish soap goes inside and then the heat, etc. So, I would go as far as say that putting something in a dishwasher makes it ben yellow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, with a dishwasher, for it to work good in terms of halacha, you can also say that you have the detergent on it. Once you have the detergent. However, I've asked everybody who I know who has a dishwasher the following question. Have you ever forgotten to put the detergent in? What you're talking about is also doing this. Everyone said that, of course, they forgot. But then you have with the dishwasher the question of, so can you put in there fleischiks and melchiks, etc. But Vadi Yosef said yes. He says, make sure you use the detergent. The initial spritzing of almost all dishwashers gets out the be'en in general. Whatever is left that's be'en is usually of such a small amount and so distorted that it's no longer. And the only reason why I, for many years, insisted that we had, that they could only use the dishwasher for one flavor and not for the other was how, as a young rabbi, was because there was a tshuva of the rabbinical assembly saying it was mutter to use. So therefore I had to be also. But in following the halachic discussions, turns out to be 100% correct. But you have to, but there is something to how it's used. You have to make sure you use it right. Yeah. Okay, so let me take you now. I have 10 minutes to Sadi Zion. in the Tzadi Zayin, yeah, Tzadi Zayin in the what we call it, Tzadi Zayin in the Torah. There's a couple of things I'll point out to you. Right, we're talking now about the dough with
Milk.
the dough with challah. So maybe I'll ask you. There's a lot of discussions. It's really, I think it's a lot of fun. You know, it goes all the way through the Beis Yosef on top of the tour, every possible shita. Basically, why can't you knead milk with dough? What's the basic Easter? What's the reason for the Easter? Yavni, what's the reason for the Easter?
Because you'll see bread and you'll eat it with meat.
You'll eat it with meat. Okay. So how do you stop eating it with meat? What can't you rely on?
You
Can't rely on just thinking about it. Because bedila, you're done bedila. Hands are busy and hands pick up the bread and they put it in your mouth and you'll eat the bread because it's there. So it can't be based on that. What can it be based on? Basically
somehow associating it with bull's eyes, which most people seem to think it means like changing its appearance from the outside by maybe like poking holes in it. But then there's also the opinion of just like making it small enough that you just like make it and eat it, and then you're not at
That
risk
seems to be
of
the
having it
halacha
around and eating it.
is actually the amount of time that you could, as opposed to what I said, you can't have consciousness for a short period of time.
Right.
What gives you that consciousness? Either you make the shape very funny, or you make an animal crackers, okay? And you do that. And there used to be a set of stores in New York in the old days, Dunkin' Donuts. In Dunkin' Donuts, why was it called
Still
Dunkin'
exists?
Donuts in the old days? Do you know why, Yavni?
Why
Was Dunkin' Donuts called Dunkin' Donuts?
Because you dunk it in the drink and
Because
coffee.
it had a handle on it made out of dough,
What?
and you could dunk your donuts. And
Whatever.
when the first texture was
What had
given
a
on
handle?
it,
The donut?
the first texture was given on it, Rav Aaron's Salvation's blessed memory, and it's made with milk. He says this is a Siman. Everyone sees the handle and it's kosher. You can dunk your donut. So one thing is that what's the other way of doing it? Making it small so that you'll eat it fast. And the third major way is that it's connected to a holiday like Shavuot. Everyone suspects. So that's the third way. And then they add a whole bunch, but basically those are the three different ways of basically what it comes down to is a heker, so that you actually see and understand that it's milchik. And here too, they talk about when it's small, like for an hors d'oeuvre, they don't use that term here, then it's understood that it's really a gornitz. It's like a nothing and may very well be milchik. So that's basically the halacha here. Then,
Rav Landes?
yeah.
Wasn't there a dispute among some hashgacha that said that if you put if it's like a mass-produced item that on the bag it says whatever the hashgacha is in D, that counts as a heker, and then other hashgacha said no.
I'm against it, but we do live in a time that people look at ingredients, etc. In religion, in very religious communities, they're careful. For example, if you get bittersweet chocolate outside of a religious community, bittersweet chocolate may be made with milk also. But bittersweet chocolate in a Haredi community never has milk in it. They won't give a hechsher to it.
I remember as
So
a
the other
teenager.
thing is also the tsura, the form that you therefore you have a You have a bereka. This is one case that's on the chief rabbinate side. Chief rabbinate says it's the halacha and the law has to be that a triangle is one type, and what's the other one? A square is another type. Which is which?
I think
One is
triangle is,
milchik and one's parf. What?
yeah, I think triangle is
Triangle's
potato.
gavina. No,
Oh.
triangle's gavina. The little cylinder ones are potato.
No.
Yeah, and so they're right. I mean, in terms of halacha, I mean, people get used to that. And it also becomes a universal symbol. So you have orchim come to the city, they know which bereka to
I
which
remember,
bereka to buy.
I just have to say one story that just short, that when I was in the supermarket when I was a kid, I remember seeing hot dog buns that were OUD. Joel, you know them, you still see that still exists?
They're all over the place. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's like, I guess people eat parv hot dogs. I don't understand it.
So that's awful. It really is awful. It's annoying. It's awful. I agree. Oh gosh. Okay. The other thing that comes up here in this one is
Wait, although they're probably, just a second, they're probably, actually, you could eat them with a flesh card. They're probably not, they're probably just dairy. See, they're probably just dairy kalim, which in my opinion is
The
nothing.
OU rarely
well,
distinguish-
that's what happened. I mean, they used to have DE. If I
They
don't
used
know
to
if
have
you
DE.
remember that.
And
which
then they
means
got rid of it.
dairy equipment. And they got rid of DE because people started learning enough to realize that you could probably, if you need to, eat this with close to fleshik. So they got rid of DE and they just left D, but actually it was a michshol. It's a real michshol for people, all that. Okay, let's talk about ovens. What's the major thing that the halacha here tells us about ovens? Putting food, okay, fleshik and milchik in an oven. Let's talk about what we have to be worried about. You have to be worried about, first of all,
Dripping.
if they're going to drip on each other, if they will drip on each other. So therefore, it's not a level oven. You have that problem. So you have to get rid of that problem. What's another problem? Another problem is recha milta or not? And here too, you have a kind of a nuance. Then we basically recha lav milta. I hold that recha is often a milta. I can't, I had a friend who family owned a fantastic deli in Chicago. And sometimes by mistake, they would put the salami in the freezer, and then the salami in the freezer would get off a powerful smell that would impact on the Ben & Jerry vanilla ice cream. And you could have a salami. I mean, strikes me there's something wrong with that, but who am I to say? So anyway, but there's so even if it's recha milta, there's still a notion of trying to keep it, the concentration away. What would you say to your what do you say to somebody has an apartment and not everyone keeps kosher in the apartment? How can they heat up the pizza when someone else is heating up the beef stroganoff, which is not kosher? What do you suggest?
Cover one of them.
Cover one of them. How much do you have to cover it? Not much. Aluminum foil, one thing aluminum foil, that should be enough. I know for policy decisions, when we have a lot of things going on, we often say double wrapping, but that's only for policy decisions. What about the business of the difference between the ovens in the time of Chazal and our ovens, which is medieval? Okay, Joel says size. And how does size make a difference?
Well, you have more
Joel?
room between each item.
Sorry, Ruben, what?
You have more room between each item, and also like the airflow is different.
Okay. What about modern ovens?
According to everybody but the Chazon Ish, they're all big, if I remember correctly.
They're all big, but ovens have no air going through it. I don't
Right,
understand the heter.
the Tosfot talked about how like bears are both big and have like holes that the air is releasing from, which would make sense that if it's both large and there's somewhere the air is going out, but ours are trapped in.
So therefore, our ovens today,
My inclination is that it's like according to the Tosfot sheet of like Recha Miltahi within certain ovens, I would say it's a Milta in our oven.
I think, don't all modern ovens have an exhaust to them?
excuse me?
Not all
I
modern
don't
ovens.
think so.
You don't think they all have
I
exhausts?
think electric ovens not. I don't know about gas ovens.
Gas oven, well, yeah.
Electric oven is not what, nothing in here. Finish.
Electric ovens are sealed. They do blow air,
Right.
but the air that they're blowing is not from inside. It's a special thing that they're blowing air to cool off the door. But they're not, I don't think they have vents, modern. The electric ovens, gas ovens might be different.
So,
I mean, I can investigate it more.
please do so. We're noheg linat lila between Fleshik and Nochak. So I bring that in as a chumrah, but you could also cover, as Lexi says, or you could also before you switch,
no problem.
before you switch from Nochak to Fleshik or reverse, you can turn on the gas for a little bit to burn up whatever's there for a few minutes. That's another suggestion.
Rav Landes,
But I'm still kind of worried about it. Yeah.
I don't know if I love this, but I seem to remember there's a Rav Avad Yosef where he claims that just turning on the oven to warm it up is enough to burn
Yeah,
off.
yeah, right. So I think that's good. Okay, thank you all very much. And next week, Nachum?
Next week is Joel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, well, the next Tzadi Daled.
It's probably like the most commonly asked questions that you'll get from people, right? It's on Tzadi Dalet. It's
Okay, inquiring minds want
The
answers.
common man.
yeah, I'll have a list of sources by probably tomorrow noon my time. So it's a little bit late, so I apologize. But
Okay, very good. Okay, Seder Gomor, thank you.
Thank you.
Laila Tov.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's a-
Thank you.